New York is full. So full that it's now building on top of its existing high-rises to create more space. This is 1 Wall Street, one of the city's oldest skyscrapers. It used to be an office building, but has now been converted into apartments. In doing so, 6 additional floors have been added on top. Adding new floors to a building is clearly not a simple task, let alone doing it on top of a skyscraper in the middle of one of the busiest cities in the world. The average concrete slab in a New York building is 8 inches thick and weighs thousands of pounds. Adding new floors means adding a lot more weight to a structure that it was not designed to cope with. If it's done wrong, it could crush the floors below. This is the story of how engineers overcame immense challenges to bring 1 Wall Street into the 2020s. It's how New York built on top of an historic skyscraper. It's taken 8 years of construction to convert this Art Deco skyscraper from offices to apartments. It's the largest building in New York City to undergo this type of adaptive reuse. While the exteriors remain mostly the same, the inside of the building has been nearly completely gutted. A total of 566 homes now occupy 1 Wall Street. Hundreds of new landmark-approved windows were added, the building's mechanical areas, as well as 30 of its elevators, had to be moved from the perimeter to the core, and of course, 6 additional floors were added to the top in a way that wouldn't crush the floors underneath.
There were a lot of challenges. We're engineers, we're tinkers, things we like to work on. This had a lot of those. It was a challenge, but it was nothing insurmountable. My name is Mark Plasciati. I'm a structural engineer. Our involvement started 2014, so it's been almost or essentially a decade's worth of work on the building.
So why did this have to happen? Why did this building have to be gutted and transformed? Well, the nature of our cities is changing. 1 Wall Street occupies a full city block bound by Broadway, Wall Street, New Street and Exchange Place. It's right in the middle of the financial district, the beating capitalist heart of this city. It's where the stock exchange is, the Federal Bank, and One World Trade Center. It's here in this district where legacies are made and lost within a matter of months. Only the savvy survive, diversifying their holdings in case of emergency. But their most valuable assets aren't locked away in a vault, they're hanging from the walls. Since the 18th century, banks have collected million-dollar paintings to reflect their expertise and protect bottom lines. Art's demonstrated price appreciation that's outperformed more traditional assets, a strategy billionaires have used to create generational wealth. Today's video sponsors Masterworks have sold over $54 million worth of art and distributed the profits to tens of thousands of investors, some of whom didn't actually know much about art. Over 900,000 users have signed up so far, and with offerings from legends like Basquiat, Picasso and Banksy, shares of some paintings have sold out within minutes. Many of the B1M subscribers have already signed up, but you can still skip the waitlist and start investing today by going to the QR code on screen or by visiting masterworks.art/the B1M. Now, let's get back to New York's financial district, a neighbourhood that's seen rapid change in recent years. Demand for office space has dwindled, and demand for housing has skyrocketed. People are looking at these towering office buildings and wondering if they could be put to better use, if people could actually live in them. But the thing is, office buildings aren't designed to be lived in, and converting them into apartments isn't easy. Offices tend to have large floor plates that don't divide into apartments very easily. They often have their plumbing, electricals and elevators in the wrong place, and they don't allow for enough natural light to reach the very centre of the floor plate.
I know that there's some projects going on, and they are actually taking one of these and cutting out a core, like an atrium, so you can actually get the light and air that you need. I am the Director of Architecture and in Design at Maclo Properties. Practiced as an architect for 2 decades before I joined Maclo Properties.
1 Wall Street is among the city's earliest skyscrapers. It was built at the beginning of the 20th century and designed by architect Ralph Walker.
The original building that was completed in 1931, it's such an iconic and significant building in New York City.
The original tower was landmarked by New York City in 1980s, 1990s, something like that. So once it becomes landmarked, you cannot touch the exterior.
This building is a prime example of the Art Deco movement that dominated Manhattan's skyline in the 1920s and 30s, and that's why it was given landmark status.
It has a limestone facade that Ralph Walker actually called as a drapery or a curtain wall, and the undulating facade is absolutely gorgeous in sunlight. Even if there was an opportunity, if it weren't landmarked, we certainly would not have taken it down. So that was one reason. But the second was it would be very complicated. We have the subway below us that if we were to demolish something and, structurally, I think it would be even more complicated to build a new tower.
While knocking the building down would of course have been complicated, there was nothing simple about retrofitting this enormous block of offices. 30 elevators had to be demolished, then new ones rebuilt in the centre of the floor plan. Mechanical rooms, which had faced the New York Stock Exchange, also had to be moved.
The office demand for elevators is much different than residential because you've got those rush hour points of the day. We have 10 elevators for the residential apartments, down from the 30, and we put them all centralized into a core. Same thing with the staircases, so that it was made it much better for efficient layouts, and as well as ability to have light and air as well.
The decision was also taken to add 6 additional floors to house more apartments and take advantage of the spectacular views from the top of this structure. Those levels were added to the annex, a 30-storey section of the building that was constructed in the 1960s. Now, one of the benefits of adding floors to this part of the structure rather than at the very tip of the skyscraper is that the annex is incredibly sturdy.
So the original design was an office building with a heavier than required design load. So it was designed for a much heavier use than office originally. The weight requirement for residential is significantly lower than it is for office. So on the existing building that was 30 stories, we took advantage at each floor of that reduction. It adds up significantly where you can take advantage of it. We still had to strengthen the upper floors to receive the added weight.
Even with the sturdiness of the building below, they still needed to reduce the weight of the additional floors. To do this, they used voided slabs. These slabs were filled with plastic cylinders before a finishing layer of concrete was put on top.
And we made the added weight at the top less by using these plastic bubbles inside the slabs. So we did what looks on a finished product like a typical standard flat concrete floor plate, but in fact has inside it plastic bubbles inserted at strategic locations to reduce the weight further.
They did leave some areas as solid concrete, especially where structural columns came through the floors. But most of the slab was built using this technique. The process reduced the overall weight of the floors by about a third. It was also far easier to construct than if they'd used steel beams.
You would have had to install a tower crane, which is extremely expensive, or you'd have to dismantle the steel into smaller pieces, bring it up by elevator, reassemble it. The concrete itself can be pumped. The rebar can be brought to the elevator very easily, and the plastic bubbles are very lightweight. So everything was brought up through the construction hoists and then installed at the top.
An incredible amount of effort has gone into retaining the Art Deco aesthetic throughout the rest of the building. The Red Room is a glittering reception area that features floor-to-ceiling mosaics designed by a famous Art Deco artist. It's been closed off for nearly 2 decades, but now it's been lovingly restored.
The developer spent over $1 million restoring the mosaics. It's 33 feet tall, and the mosaics were cleaned with non-abrasive solutions. You can imagine that from 1931 to 2019, that's not nearly 100 years worth of whether it was cigarette smoke or what it would be on these mosaics, but it was carefully restored.
One Wall Street has now completed and welcomed the first of its new residents. But is it a symbol for the future of New York? As cities change, our buildings have to change and adapt with them. Perhaps nothing is more emblematic of the current state of the city than one of New York's ancient financial skyscrapers turning into apartments. We might be seeing many more of these iconic buildings changing or gaining floors in the future. This video was sponsored by Masterworks. You can skip their waitlist at the link below. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into Brickborough. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborough.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.